In the Wangu Mountains, the yin haze never lifts in that dead gray silence. A hulking man in a fluorescent green compression tank looks like a glitch in the world. One moment, Peter was jogging under California's sun. The next, he stood in a wasteland of cracked stone and withered trees. The wind was cold, rotten, but heat still rolled off the hard muscle that protein powder and heavy iron had carved into him. Peter stared at the bare branches, trying to make sense of it. A slash of bloodlight tore across the sky. A demonic patriarch called Bloodcrow Ancestor dropped from the clouds. He had come hunting boys and girls for a quick bite. Instead, he ran into something far stranger. His hand was shriveled. Like a claw, his fingers pinched the bicep of Peter. In an instant, the flesh was tight and springy. It even carried a pure yang warmth, like the finest ingredient fresh off the fire. Greed flashed in the old man's cloudy eyes. This was no man to him. This was a breathing slab of perfect pork belly. The marbling was clean and sharp, not a trace of mortal grime tainted it. It was a once-in-a-lifetime base for refining a human pill, but in Peter's eyes, the scene meant something else. An elder in ancient robes was floating in midair, and the man was squeezing his muscle with fierce focus. Peter felt his chest light up with joy. He was sure he had been dropped into a secret Eastern cultivation world, and this eager old master had spotted his hidden talent. Peter could not understand the muttering about tender meat and how long to steam it. He only saw the hungry look. A man gives a prime steak, so he rewrote it in his mind as a teacher's approval. He made his choice in a heartbeat. He dropped to his knees on the gravel. He slammed his head down 3 times. He shouted in broken Chinese Shifu. Bloodcrow Ancestor froze at the sudden tribute, then a thin, cruel smile crept over his face. This ingredient even had spirit. It was delivering itself. He would not even need rope. With a sweep of his sleeve, he rolled up the 200-pound fresh-cut egg. Blood, wind, rose, and the pair shot toward the temple. Moments later, Peter stood inside the main hall of Bloodcrow Temple. The walls were draped with dried human skin, white bones hung like decorations. The air reeked of stale blood. A normal man would have lost his mind. Peter only stared with shining eyes. His face glowed with worship. He pointed at a corpse on the wall with its meridians exposed. He marveled at his master's medical skill. This had to be a meridian and acupoint teaching model from legend. It was so lifelike, it felt like Art. Bloodcrow Ancestor watched the blonde giant. No crying, no screaming, only excited pointing at the dead. The ancestor felt even more satisfied. The fool was slow in the head, but the courage was good. Fear would not sour the flavor during curing to keep the ingredient fresh and lively. He led Peter to the backyard. There sat a wood shed packed with tools. Giant chopping blocks filled the room. Boning blades gleamed on the racks. Iron hooks for hanging meat swung from the beams. Peter looked it all over. Those iron pieces were heavier than gym machines. His throat tightened with gratitude. He believed his master had built him a minimalist training hall, a place to grind strength and awaken power through chopping wood and cutting vegetables. He did not wait for orders. He grabbed a rag. He began wiping the black iron table, the same table meant to take him apart piece by piece. Bloodcrow Ancestor carried a chipped clay bowl into the woodshed. The bowl was full of thick soup so green it looked sick. Ugly bubbles crawled across the surface. It was a brutal purge brewed from Duanchang herb juice. He used it to scrub the filth out of an ingredient's guts. Peter was starving, and his vision swam. He mimed a burger and chicken breast. With desperate hands, the ancestor smacked Peter on the forehead and shut that down. He forced the bowl into Peter's mouth and made him drink it. All the brew hit with fishy heat and a stinging stink. Peter fought the urge to vomit. In his mind, he repeated that this was a mysterious marrow-cleansing spirit. Liquid, he told himself. It was the first step on the road to transcendence. The effect hit harder than a California earthquake. Within half an hour, Peter was dragged through a hell of diarrhea. By the end, he was limp on the straw, like a washed-out corpse. Anyone else would be screaming for mercy. Peter lay there, pale and smiling like a fanatic. He believed the violence was purging years of industrial poison, and trans fat, the hollow emptiness in his belly, felt holy to him. This had to be the Bigu realm he had read about. The ancestor came in to inspect the results. Peter's stomach was flat and clean. After the purge, Peter trembled and gave a shaky thumbs up. Once the insides were clean, it was time to soak and set the form in the courtyard. A black iron vat, as tall as a man, was boiling black liquid rolled inside, and sent up a heavy sauce aroma and bitter preserving herbs. The ancestor pointed at the vat and motioned for Peter to jump in. Peter stared at the steaming brew and took a deep breath. He saw an action hero rebuilding a golden body in a medicinal bath. He roared, "No pain, no gain." He stripped naked and leapt into the vat. The scalding liquid wrapped him from head to toe. His skin flushed red in an instant. Pain nearly ripped a scream out of him. He clamped his jaw shut. He locked both hands on the rim. Veins stood out across his arms as he forced his mind to accept the heat. He imagined muscle fibers tearing and knitting back stronger. This was a high-heat spa. This was the final tempering of will and flesh. The ancestor stood over the vat, feeding dry wood into the stove. He pushed the fire higher and watched in amazement. The blonde ingredient skin was stubbornly tough in the boiling sauce. It did not split and burst. Instead, the color grew more rosy and more tempting. It was a rare top-grade hard dish. The sauce sent in the vati to reach her by the breath, but Bloodcrow ancestor still caught something wrong with his demonic nose. It was the gamey stench of a Western barbarian. If he did not strip it out, it would ruin a perfect pot. His brows knotted as he pulled out a packet of demonic realm hell fire chili powder. A single pinch could burn an ordinary beast straight through its guts. It was a savage seasoning for killing stink and forcing flavor into the flesh. He dumped the entire packet into the vat. Without holding back, the black liquid flipped into a boil of blood-red bubbles. A razor-hot cloud of spice steam shot into the air. Peter felt every pore pierced by countless red-hot needles. The burn was far worse than the boiling bath. Before it burns, he roared, with eyes blazing red. But to him, that tearing pain was the signal of fat burning off at full speed. He became certain his master was using fierce medicine to awaken his metabolism. To help the medicine absorb, Peter actually stood up inside the boiling chili brew. He started throwing American boxing combos, left hook, then right hook. He churned the human hot pot soup until it splashed in every direction. He shouted, "Burn those calories." Bloodcrow ancestor watched with a deep frown. This ingredient had too much vitality. Those tendons and hard muscle knots were stiff as stone. If he cooked it like this, he might crack a few old teeth. He needed physical tenderizing. He snatched up the spiked mace from the corner. Dried blood crusted its brutal head. It was a tool meant for smashing the leg bones of giant demon beasts. Peter saw the vicious weapon, and his breath caught. Then a fevered light burst in his eyes. He blurted out Vajra bone forging art in his mind. This was the legendary hard training that rebuilt you at the edge of death. Before Peter could even set his stance, the ancestor could not hold back any longer. He swung the mace in a full arc and slammed it into Peter's rock, hardback muscles. A dull boom shook the shed. Peter hurt so bad he nearly blacked out, but he saw the ancestor grinding his teeth with saliva at his lip. Peter mistook it for strict anger that he was not tough enough. "Come on, Peter," he yelled. He pushed his back forward on purpose. The ancestor was delighted by such cooperation. The mace began to fall like rain. He aimed for the thickest meat. Every time each blow landed with a muffled sound, like flesh tearing away from bone. Peter was beaten until his skin split and his body bruised deep and wide. The tight muscle fibers finally broke apart. They slumped and softened. Bloodcrow ancestor rubbed Peter's arm like a butcher, checking the cut. It felt as soft as cotton. He swallowed hard. Now it would take seasoning well, and it would not stick in his teeth. Bloodcrow ancestor tossed aside the spiked mace, still crusted with meat, scraps his dried hands flashed out like hawk talons. He locked onto Peter's shoulder joint with perfect precision. If he wanted to gnaw later, without trouble, he had to break the big joints first. It was the same simple logic as snapping a chicken wing. Before you eat it, a bone-cracking sound rang out sharp enough to make teeth ache. Peter's left shoulder popped out of socket. Peter did not scream, he shut his eyes. He let out a long, satisfied groan in Peter's mind. This was legendary Chinese bone setting therapy. Why? The method was savage. The results were instant. Blood Crow ancestor did not stop. He ran demonic power through all 10 fingers. He used the infamous tendon-splitting, bone-twisting hand art. He pressed down hard along Peter's spine from top to bottom. Every finger strike came with a faint crunch of cartilage breaking. It was meant to separate ribs from spine, so the stew would take flavor. Peter only felt his stiff traps go strangely loose after the shock of pain. He believed this was deep myofascial release. He believed years of gym lactic acid were being wiped clean in a moment. He even felt like his Ren and Du meridians had been opened. When it was over, every joint in Peter was half out and half in. He swayed like a noodle boiled too long. Blood Crow ancestor pulled back his hands and studied his work with satisfaction. The ingredient was no longer rock stiff. It would be easy to bite. Peter panted. He felt a flexibility he had never known. He looked at his master. Drenched in sweat, warmth flooded his chest. This was the Eastern bond of master and disciple. Like father and son, his master was personally working his body to help him break a bottleneck. Thank you, master. Tears streamed down Peter's face. He threw his arms wide. He dragged both half-dislocated arms toward the ancestor. He charged in for a huge American-style hug. Blood Crow ancestor jolted with demonic aura. For a heartbeat, he thought the ingredient had turned into a corpse demon. He almost threw up a protective treasure to blast this traitor into ash. Then he forced himself calm. He reached out and pinched that thick bicep hard. The feel under his fingertips was no longer stone hard. It was springy and soft. It was the texture only top-grade pork belly could have. Blood Crow ancestor stared at the perfect half-finished dish ready for the pot. His throat bobbed. A drop of cloudy saliva slipped down his lip. It landed on Peter's shoulder. Peter felt the warm liquid. He shivered. He looked up into the eyes, staring straight at him. Those were tears. Peter was sure of it. His master was moved to tears by his determination in this rotten slaughter room. Hunger and gratitude tangled into one. Greed fed on misunderstanding. Misunderstanding called itself devotion. And for one terrifying moment, master and disciple reached a harmony they had never known. Peter spent several days in bone setting therapy. He still walked like an overcooked noodle, but his spirit only grew more fired up. One thing kept bothering him. That huge fat senior brother who used to sweep the yard had vanished. To Peter, the man had the build of a powerlifting beast in a cultivation sect. That meant pure strength and iron roots. So during morning practice, while the ancestors sipped tea, Peter used broken Chinese and frantic gestures to ask where senior brother went. Blood Crow ancestor lounged in his chair. He picked a tiny strand of meat from between his teeth. It was the tender heart guard flesh from the new he ate last night. Hearing Peter ask, he let a teasing glint pass through his cloudy eyes. He pointed west, as if talking about the wind. He said, your senior brother reached his destiny. He already went to the Western Paradise to enjoy blessings. Western Paradise. Peter's eyes exploded with blinding light. To him, that meant ascension, the final goal of Eastern cultivation, a holy realm beyond even the title of Mr. Olympia. He sprinted toward the forbidden backyard. The ancestor always said it was his secluded retreat, but now Peter only wanted to witness the miracle. Senior brother left behind. On a massive drying rack hung a brand new skeleton. It was huge and ghost white. Every bone was thick and shocking. Not a thread of soft tissue remained. Sunlight washed over it, like it was carved from polished stone. Blood crow ancestor hid in the shadows and watched. He expected panic. By his experience, a mortal seeing human bones would break down and sour the meat with fear. He was ready to suppress this foreigner with demonic arts, but Peter did the opposite. He dropped to his knees in front of the skeleton. His hands trembled as he traced the smooth ribs. His eyes burned with worship and envy. Peter screamed inside his own head, "Look at this cut." This was the peak of human aesthetics. This was pure dryness. This was zero fat, an absolute definition to him. It had to be a dharma shell, a mortal body shed after ascension. So this is the end of cultivation. Peter thought. You break free of flesh, you forge crystal clear jade bones. Senior brother, you not only carried your soul away, you also dropped every last ounce of fat. Peter's eyes turned red. He was moved to the core by such clean results. He clenched his fists in front of the skeleton that still carried a faint broth scent. He made a solemn vow. Master Peter will work twice as hard. Master Peter will never slack off. One day I will be sent west by Shifu too. I will leave behind a perfect skeleton for others to admire in the shadows. Blood crow ancestor lowered the demonic claw he had readied. He scratched his scalp in confusion. This top-grade ingredient was not afraid of death. It seemed impatient to climb into the pot. He could not understand it, but as long as the meat stayed sweet instead of sour, this foreign fool could believe whatever he wanted. Blood crow ancestor circled Peter 3 times. He pressed a thumb into those full pectoral muscles. His brows pinched tight. The meat was firm and springy, but lately it had been fed too hard. There was a greasy heaviness hiding in it. If he cooked it like this, the mouthfeel would be dull. Peter saw the frown and panicked inside. He thought his master was disappointed. Then he watched the elder gesture for him to stop eating. Peter felt his eyes go hot. So this was the legendary extreme fasting method, the kind the fitness world worships. Master was pushing him to the edge of human science. Master was helping him chase the lowest body fat of his life. Master was forcing him into a deep keto state. For the first 2 days, Peter held on with raw will. Hunger made his vision shimmer. In the haze, he imagined Schwarzenegger on a cloud reaching out to him. But on the third night, the body is the body instinct finally tore through his discipline. Peter stumbled outside like a starving animal near a pile of rotting corpses. He saw a purple-black plant. Its leaf edges carried a faint ghostly glow. It was rotbone grass, a poison so vicious cultivators feared it. A mortal who touched it would die and melt into blood water. But in Peter's eyes, it was not poison. It was a bowl of top-tier organic purple cabbage salad. His hand shook. He grabbed a fistful, root and dirt and all. He stuffed it into his mouth and chewed like a man drowning. He kept eating. One rotbone grass after another vanished down his throat. The terror inside the plant rushed into his blood. It should have eaten through his organs in an instant, but it slammed into something unnatural in him. Cells hardened by chilly brine. A body strengthened by pure yang heat. The two forces crashed again and again inside Peter. In the end, they reached an eerie balance. The poison did not explode. It was wrapped layer by muscle fibers. Tough as hide, it sank deep into every strand of flesh, like high-energy explosives sealed in wax. At dawn, Blood Crow ancestor came to inspect his goods. He froze. Peter was still alive, and kicking his skin carried a strange new hue. He looked like meat that had been soaked in something forbidden. Blood Crow ancestor could not understand how this happened. Peter only believed he had survived a trial of starvation. He thought he had stepped closer to true cultivation. In truth, Peter had become something else entirely, a walking human bioweapon packed with concentrated nerve toxin, waiting for heat to trigger it, waiting to release a death fog that could end a life in one breath. Blood Crow ancestor circled Peter twice after the night of rotbone grass. The flesh looked even redder and more tempting with poison sunk deep inside, but the golden body hair all over him made the old demon feel disgust. A top-tier main dish had to slide on the tongue with no grit. If that hair went into hot oil, it would burn. The stink would ruin the whole pot. Cold light flashed in Bloodcrow ancestor. Eyes his dead fingers formed a seal, a veil of dim green cleansing light dropped over Peter. From head to toe Peter felt a sudden chill like weak electricity, skating over every pore. In the next breath, his chest hair and leg hair began to fall, his shining blonde hair followed. Right after it all turned to ash in midair and drifted away. Peter reached up and touched his head. It was smooth as glass. He rushed to a bronze mirror by the wall. The face staring back looked like a peeled egg. Even his eyebrows were gone. In that instant, Peter understood everything. A memory of One Punch Man stabbed through his brain. Bald really was the price of power. More than that, he felt the wisdom behind his master's move. This was aerodynamics. Cultivators flew through the sky. No hair meant less drag. This was the ultimate physics prep for the ascension ceremony. Peter stroked his bald head like it was sacred. He bowed deeply to Bloodcrow ancestor. His eyes shone with worship for scientific cultivation. Bloodcrow ancestor stared at him in silence, not angry, not afraid, not even a little upset. The old demon could not understand it. To test the elasticity of the meat under true terror, Bloodcrow ancestor decided to drop the mask. He unleashed his most ruthless scare tactic. A black wind exploded through the temple. Bloodcrow ancestor body swelled like a nightmare. Behind him, a colossal skull demon image rose into the air. Blood poured from its eyes and mouth. Ghost screams tore across the hall. Wrathful souls howled inside a red mist. Even the dried corpses on the walls trembled under that pressure. This sight could have scared a nascent soul cultivator. Death. Peter only stared wide-eyed, his mouth hung open in awe. Then he started clapping. In Peter's mind, this was Hollywood-grade tech. This was an 8D hologram show. Master was demonstrating cultivation Dharma bodies with insane production value. Cool. That is so real, Peter shouted. Master, these effects beat Marvel. He even reached out like a kid at a theme park. He tried to touch the floating skull. Bloodcrow ancestor face went stiff. The skull demon image stalled in the air like it felt embarrassed. This ingredient had zero fear. It treated him like a circus magician. Bloodcrow ancestor had no choice but to pull the illusion back. He sighed in the dark of his own heart. If terror could not tighten the texture, then he would let it be. He would turn this foreign fool into carefree, happy meat. A cheerful ingredient might soak up flavor even better. Inside the main peak Taoist hall, a bronze cauldron the size of a house had been raised on iron frames. Under it, ghost blue spirit charcoal burned for 1,000 years. That flame did not spread warmth outward. It swallowed the surrounding light like a black hole. Inside the cauldron, the medicinal broth that used to boil now lay flat like a mirror. A dizzying, sweet scent drifted up. It was the final base made from 100 herbs fused with the blood of toxic demon beasts. Bloodcrow ancestor held a jade bowl carved from the skullcap of a high-tier cultivator. Golden thick liquid filled it to the brim. It was a secret coating blended from corpse oil and royal venom bee jelly gathered over a century. It was made to lock moisture inside top-grade meat. He stepped up to Peter, his withered palm dipped into the sticky gold. He began rubbing it slowly across Peter's bare muscle. Warm, slick heat spread over Peter's skin. Joy detonated in his chest. To him, this was the last step before a championship show. This was competition oil because his whole body had been stripped of hair. His lines now looked sharp and clean. His muscles stood out like a Greek statue under firelight. To help his master, he controlled his breathing like a pro. He flexed on purpose. He made the oil catch every ridge and curve evenly. Master, look at this side chest, Peter shouted and snapped into position. He turned hard to the side. He curled one arm and crushed his pecs tight. His back leg drove down and his thigh lit up with definition. Bloodcrow ancestor was rubbing oil along the rib area. His hands paused as he stared. Peter shifted again without warning. He threw his elbows out and spread wide. He hit a classic crab pose. His traps shivered and jumped under the gold-sheen blood-crow ancestor. Swallowed, he hurried to coat those trembling muscles in his heart. He praised the ingredient for knowing how to loosen the fibers on its own. When the coating was done, Peter gleamed from head to toe. He looked like a golden arhat. Steam rose from the giant cauldron. Spirit light curled through the air. Peter lifted his gaze toward it in his eyes. It was not a cooking pot. It was a cosmic gate. It was the final ceremony to step into a higher dimension. He drew in a long breath. There was no fear of death in him, only hunger to explore the unknown. He began reciting a silent farewell in his heart. He said goodbye to Earth. He said goodbye to protein powder and barbells. He braced himself to enter the golden age that was waiting for him. Blood Crow Ancestor raised his hand and gave a sharp command. The bronze cauldron roared like a beast. Special spirit oil churned inside it in violent waves. Each bubble burst with a thick scent that made the air feel sweet and dangerous. Blood Crow Ancestor pointed at the boiling pot that could melt gold and iron. He told Peter this was the legendary marrow-washing holy water. He said all Peter had to do was jump in and endure a little while. Peter stared at the rolling brown liquid. A primitive fear tightened his throat. He could feel the heat from several steps away. It was beyond anything a human body should survive. It looked wilder than the most unhinged deep fryer in Texas. Then Peter turned and saw his master watching him with eager, anxious eyes. All hesitation collapsed under the blind faith he had built these days. If chili brine could temper the body, if the spiked mace could forge the bones, then boiling oil had to be the final gate to a higher realm, to face ascension in peak condition. Peter began a last warm-up beside the cauldron. He ran high knees in place until the ground trembled. Then he dropped into a clean set of burpees. Each landing made the earth quiver. Golden oil slicked over his skin, and his muscles rolled like waves under firelight. Blood Crow Ancestor watched without blinking. Joy spread through his old demonic heart. This ingredient even knew how to activate its own blood flow. Before the pot, the circulation was fast. The meat would be fresh. The texture would be tender. It would melt in the mouth. When the warm-up ended, Peter was drenched in sweat. The golden sheen on his body glittered in the flames. He turned back with deep feeling in his eyes. He grabbed his master's dry bark-like hand and squeezed it tight. Tears filled his eyes. "Master, you are the best coach I have ever had." Peter choked the words out in English. It sounded like a farewell speech to him. It was pure gratitude. Blood Crow Ancestor understood none of that strange bird talk, but the heat in Peter's palm and the rich meat aroma made his mouth water. A century of waiting. Today he would finally taste the pure young holy body. He could not hold it back. Tears slid down the grooves of his ancient face. His mouth twitched as he swallowed again and again. Peter saw his master crying in public. His heart cracked open with emotion. He thought this was the hidden tenderness of an Eastern powerhouse. He thought this was the pain of parting between master and disciple. Peter looked once more at the ancestor, who seemed flustered and kept swallowing saliva. Then he turned toward the boiling oil. He drew in a long breath. He raised both arms and set his stance like a diver at the edge of a cliff. A fire of resolve burned in his eyes. He looked ready to jump into death for the sake of ascension. Peter stood on the rim of the bronze giant cauldron. He spread his arms wide like a great rock. He faced the surging hot spirit oil in the darkest demon pit of this cultivation world. He roared a classic lyric from home. He shouted, "I believe I can fly." Then, with a heavy boom, his 200-pound body, tempered through countless trials, slammed into the boiling spirit oil. Blood Crow Ancestor shook with excitement until his beard quivered. He praised that perfect arc through the air. He praised that ruthless resolve on the way into the pot. Scalding oil splashed up and burned the fire-holding boys until they wailed. But the ancestor did not care at all. His greed had already broken loose. He lunged to the cauldron edge. In one step, his nostrils flared like madness. He wanted the first burst of freshness. The instant the ingredient hit the oil, the moment Peter's skin was sealed by extreme heat, the rotbone grass poison he had eaten by mistake in the back mountain was fully awakened in this blazing environment, and under the catalysis of special spirit oil, it activated completely. The top-tier poison grass from another world collided with demonic secret medicine in a catastrophe of chemistry. A nearly transparent strange vapor surged out of the cauldron. It rushed forward with no warning and struck like a wave. The ancestor inhaled greedily. The meat fragrance he expected never arrived. A lethal coldness instead speared straight into the crown of his head. This single breath of steam carried concentrated decay of countless herbs and ruthless chemical poison. It was tyrannical beyond reason. In the next instant, the ancestor dissolved into a puddle of black water. His eyes stayed round and wide. The wild joy of imminent feasting still hung on his face, yet his body toppled backward. Stiff as a board, he hit the ground hard and died on the spot. Then the pressure inside the cauldron broke its balance. A violent blast erupted. Scalding hot oil exploded like a volcano. Peter's body, with skin fried to golden brown, shot out like a cannonball. He slammed through 3 hall pillars and fell unconscious. No one knew how long passed. Peter finally woke in the ruins. His skin was red, swollen, and peeling, but with terrifying muscle density and a special pure young constitution, he survived by miracle. After that blast, he felt his whole body open and clear. It was as if he had truly been reborn. He searched around and found his master lying on the ground. The ancestor face was rigid, the breath was long gone. Peter collapsed beside the corpse and cried until his chest tore. He stared at the wrecked hall and built the truth by himself. The cauldron must have exploded by accident. At the final moment, his master must have used a lifetime of power to shield him. Peter buried the ancestor in the back mountain with tears. He found a flat plank of wood. He carved large words into it with a dagger. The words were the greatest coach. He set it upright at the grave. After he handled the aftermath, Peter returned to the broken hall. The demonic disciples, who had waited to divide scraps, now shrank in the corner. They trembled and stared at this monster that even an oil cauldron blast could not kill. In their eyes, he had poisoned the ancestor without a trace. He had endured an explosion. With his flesh, he was the unfathomable new generation devil. Overlord Peter wiped his tears away. His gaze swept over the frail junior brothers with unshakable resolve. He believed the fear in their eyes came from losing the protection of their master and feeling lost as senior brother. He felt duty settle onto his shoulders. He spoke in a firm voice. He said, "We lost master, but our special training cannot stop." He said, "From today, Blood Crow Temple is officially renamed Pure Young Fitness Club." He said, "I am your new head coach." He said, "Now everyone obey." He said, "First set, burpees start."